All right, let's get to it. Tonight on Snobs Movie Summer School, talking franchise fatigue. Now, what does that mean? It's similar to everything that we talk about within movies. It's all cyclical. Things are always going to come in and out. There were times where disaster movies for a small period of time, everybody loved them. Horror movies for a small period of time, like everybody loved them. They were all similar tone. A good thing is that a good example of this is like Scream. When Scream came out, it was new, it was fresh, it was meta, it was different. In the 90s, like it was just something that popped, and it was such a huge hit. Now you have the I Know What You Did Last Summer. You have all these movies that follow suit that are similar about these WB type tweens running out, getting in trouble, and having a killer come after them. Nothing wrong with that. It's a formula. Formulas work. Right now, we are in the franchise formula, and I think the fatigue is there. It's tired. It really started, not to say that it didn't exist and we didn't have franchises always existing, but I'd say right after Dark Knight, even Batman Begins was a hit, but wasn't a huge hit. But it was the Dark Knight and then Iron Man that really sold that franchises are the way. They, even by that point, you had three versions of, or three movies in the Fast and Furious. So by 2008, you had three movies in the Fast and Furious franchise. And by by 2023, only like 15 years later, we're going on 11. And that's not even counting all of the spinoffs and such. We have a lot of franchises that are pumped out constantly. And that is the big thing. And I think that's where that greed factor that we were talking about earlier in the show with, when it comes to studios and movie critics and such, it plays into this as well. Franchise fatigue is a real deal. And I really think that we are at a point where like people are just tired of the same now status quo. Yeah, I'm going to go see a Marvel movie. I'm going to go enjoy it. But more and more, it seems like people aren't, because they're just not holding up to what they were. And I think that goes with anything. I think you just need to cycle it out. I think there needed to be a break after Endgame. And I know that's kind of a tough thing to sell, because if you take a break, you miss out on actors getting older and not being able to do the roles and come back and revisit. But we had such a finality with that movie, and with like over 20 movies leading up to it, that I think it just was time for a little bit of a break. And we've got some things since then that we enjoyed, but we've certainly seen an influx of so much more and so much change. When you add change to your franchise, it hurts it in a lot of ways, because now people get even more tired. So when we get into it and we have, franchises that are just huge. So let's talk about the domestic. All right. I want to talk about domestic first. And then we're going to talk about worldwide. And I'm just doing the past 10 years. Okay. So actually, I'll go back to 2008, because that's where we're starting with the Dark Knight. Since 2008, in this domestic box office to 2023, we have seen every year the highest grossing movie has been a part of a franchise, except for two. And the first one was in 2010, and it was Avatar. Now, Avatar, of course, is its own franchise. We've seen what it's going to be built to. We see where it's going. So it's already become such a huge hit that it is a franchise. So you see where I'm going with that? So now there's that fatigue of like, all right, granted, there was a lot of years in between, but do we care? Like, the movie didn't do as well. It's not the number one movie this year at the box office. So Avatar 2 didn't hold up to what the first one was. So they're still going to make them. We're still going to have a franchise. But then this year, is 2023, is the other movie that wasn't a part of a movie franchise that was currently out. And that is the Super Mario Brothers, which, again, you can argue is its own huge franchise within itself, and already had a built-in audience when the movie was getting ready to come out. But it's the number one movie. And now if you go back and you look at the domestic and the total gross of everything, 2000, and so since 2020, it's been over $1 billion for every movie. And that has been 2020 Bad Boys for Life, which is part of franchise. That was the third one. $2 billion. Then you had Spider-Man No Way Home made 4 billion, 4.4. Then Top Gun Maverick made 7.3 billion. And now the Super Mario Brothers is sitting at 4.7 billion. 2008 was the last time we had that single digit billion, which was $9 billion, 9.6 billion, and it was The Dark Knight. Everything else has been 10 billion or above, and has all been franchises except for Avatar, which again has grown into a franchise. So it's sort of all of these things are still franchise capable. My biggest point to all of this is, how often do you look at a movie theater, look at a movie coming out in these franchises and what's happening, and say to yourself, I need a break, or I'm done, or I'm not going to see that. I just can't push for it. This, that, the other thing. All too often, even worldwide, it's very similar. I don't think anything is different worldwide from, it isn't. Everything is the same from 2008 to above. Everything is the same on the worldwide that it is on the domestic. They just earned a little bit more. Well, not really. They earned pretty much the same. So my point is, with franchise fatigue, I think that's what's burning out the movie theater going experience right now. And I think the movie theaters need to demand more. When it really comes down to it, they need to demand, like, listen, you have so many of these other streaming movies that are doing really well, that are comedies, this, that, the other thing, musicals, stuff like that. We need to make more than just superhero movies. We need to make more than just fast movies. We need to make more than just this, that, or the other thing that we've seen time and time and time again. They may be great to sell your streaming services, but you are killing the movie theater. And I think we need to really spark some discussion on where we need to go with it, because horror movies aren't doing it, because horror movies are widely independent at this point that are doing really well. And the big budget horror movies just aren't sitting as well as they could be. And we're not putting enough into them for that. So it really just comes down to, what do we want and where are we going? And I like what Phil had said earlier when we were talking on the show, that we need more mid-card movies. We need more movies coming out that are just separate and different. What happened to the romantic comedies? How do you expect us to bring, our significant others to the movies for a date night, and all there is just action movies across the board? You're exhausting us. And you're exhausting your bank accounts. I'll tell you that much. James says they do make more, just no one goes to see them, or they wait to see them at home. They're always going to make money. They're not making their money back. They're really not. Go look at the numbers. Go look at the marketing. These movies aren't making their money back. So we're seeing the downward spiral of what's happening in the movie industry and what we're putting our focus on. If we stop making $300 million movies at pop, which 20 years ago was an ungodly amount to even think about, to make a movie. If we stop making those and start making good movies that are well told, we're going to have a good time. I think the biggest indicators right now are what's going to happen in the next few weeks. I think Dead Reckoning is going to do really well, because that franchise has been coming out and it's been separated long enough each year, about 4, 5, 6 years or so between each movie. And I think this one's going to spark. Plus, it's the end. He's ending it. So it's the first part 1, 2, a 2-part ender. So I think that will do well. I think Barbie will do really well. I don't know that Oppenheimer is going to do well. Not that it's not going to be a great movie. Not that it's not going to be interesting to go and see. And I will be seeing it. But I just don't think that Oppenheimer is going to hold up to Barbie. Because right now, all we know is to go see these movies. Go see these big, flashy movies that make a ton of money. And I can tell you with surety, there's already spin-offs being planned for the Barbie movie. This was supposed to be a movie that was so outside the box. They got Greta Gerwig. Now look her up if you don't know who she is as a filmmaker. And Noah Baumbach, who wrote it. To say that they directed and wrote a Barbie movie is ridiculous unless you know their style of filmmaking. And that makes me want to see it more, because it's so out there and they have such a different perspective on things that to see this big of a franchise type of movie be made by them is interesting to me. But we're not seeing that in too many other elements. They're not seeing that in too many. They're throwing directors that, sometimes you hear of, sometimes you don't hear of, or sometimes they're just stuck to this franchise because they're yes men. I want to see more of this. I want to see more indie filmmakers get bumped up to really try and tell a good story that's out of their element. So I think franchise fatigue is really what's hurting things right now. I think indie would have done better, and a few other things would have done better. The Flash is like it's like an enigma all itself, but like a lot of these other movies I could have seen doing better if there just wasn't each week some type of event. But it's not really an event. It's just boring at some points. It's just not hitting. Of course, we were going to go see The Last Guardians of the Galaxy, but look at Ant-Man. Ant-Man should have been on the same level, but for some reason, these things are getting too tired and too old, and they're just not working. So that's my feelings on franchise fatigue. Let me know what you guys think. Sound off. You can hit us up here, leave a message. If you're on the clip, which I cut later, you can please feel free to jump in. Let us know what you think. But let's get into it. Last segment for tonight. Oh, wait, James actually said something I want to bring up. I think Barbie versus Oppenheimer box office battle has become so much of a meme that it will propel them both into a big box office numbers. When you have two movies, you got two movies like that, you're never going to have two big box office numbers, blockbuster numbers. One of them is going to fail. One of them now maybe make its money over time, whatever else. It's just too fast that they're taking movies out. But I think Barbie is going to be the big winner that weekend because there's not enough people who want to see two movies during the summer in one day or one weekend. So we'll see how it does, how it all plays out. But I think if there's going to be a choice, it's going to be Barbie that's probably going to make it. All right, let's get to our last segment of the night, and that is